All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Building Blocks, Parenting in the 21st Century. Throughout this process, we have talked about communication, direction, creating a roadmap, and a lot of these things, they overlap. And tonight, we address discipline. But to open up, I got an icebreaker question for you. The icebreaker question is this: what motivates you in your day-to-day life? What motivates you in your day-to-day life? And also, what methods help you in remembering things? So, quick answers. What helps you and motivates you in your day-to-day life? What do you got?
I don't know. Family?
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 I imagine most people would probably say that. Family motivates you in your day-to-day life. Usually it's the idea of like my kids are depending on me, my spouse is depending on me, my mom and dad are depending on me. What are some other things that we could possibly say motivate us in our day-to-day life? I would say money's probably one of them, which I guess can be related to family as well, especially if we're working folks. Want to make sure that we are secure in our house and our food. In the 21st century, here in the U.S. of A., we want to make sure we got the lights on, have internet, have ways to entertain ourselves. These things are important as well. The next question: what are methods that help us in remembering things? If we have to remember something, what do we usually do? What are some ways that we can help remember things?
Make a list.
Make a list. Again, back in the 21st century, I think most people use a smartphone and probably like calendar on a smartphone. Hey Google, set a reminder. Hey Siri, set a reminder. Did that set off anyone's phones? Okay, no, it didn't set off anyone's phones. But yeah, these are things that we do to help remember things. In school, how did we remember things? Like when we had exams and we had to remember our times tables, or we had to remember our presidents or our state capitals. What were ways that helped us remember things? Songs can help us remember things. What else? Poems, songs, anything that rhymes is good. Repetition, I would say, is probably a big part of that as well. If you did the times tables just once, most people are not going to remember their multiplication tables after doing them just once. It's repetition. You got to do it over and over and over again, because it's really awkward when you're in your 20s. And it's like 9 times 3. Okay, 9 plus 9 is 18. If you add another 9, that's 27. Yeah, you have to know 9 times 3 is 27 really fast. And part of that happens because of repetition. You do it so often that it just becomes second nature. It's involuntary. You just remember what these things are. So repetition plays a huge role in that. So again, most of the time, for better or worse, our discipline options are based on what our parents did, or at least based on what we think they did. So again, I've been in youth ministry long enough that I've had teenagers that have grown up, become parents, and their kids are now in my youth department. And there's one particular moment I remember. I was kicking back with a dad who had been in my youth ministry. And we were having our typical old guy rant about how, the good old days where kids had respect kind of thing. And as he's ranting, he's like, man, if my parents if I didn't say yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, man, they'd pop me in the mouth and give me what for. And I'm thinking to myself, I know your mom and dad. Not only did they not do that, they hardly disciplined you at all. You were rarely grounded for more than 24 hours. Where is this coming from? And this is what I discovered. Our memories can sometimes be jaded. They can sometimes be discolored or rewritten. In other words, the good old days are the good old days simply because they're old, but at the same time, sometimes we think things are worse when in reality they really weren't. But here's the problem. What happens when I think or I feel that my parents were harsher on me than what they really were? And as we talked about before with communication and setting foundations, what happens then when now I have a kid in my care, when I have a child in my care, and it's now on me to discipline them? And I'm going to go off, not necessarily what my parents did, but what I think they did. And what happens if I think they were harsher than what they actually were? Things to consider. So at its core, again, what is discipline? For most of us, when we hear discipline, we basically think of this idea of like giving them what for. We need to teach them and teach them good. And there's some truth to that in the sense that the goal of discipline should be to learn. We want to teach them. We want to teach them the right way of doing things. We want to teach them how to be good members of society, how to be good members of our community, how to not be in jail, how to not cause trouble, how to be mature, how to be respectful. And discipline is the avenue that we get them there on those things. Most people, when they think of discipline, they think either grounding or some kind of corporal punishment, which involves like some kind of spanking or something like that. And it's much bigger than that. The problem is sometimes when we think of discipline, we don't think so much of the primary function, which is to teach and to learn. Some of us, again, we think of discipline as an avenue in which they're supposed to hurt. Many times we focus on the hurt at the expense of the learn. At that point, the whole thing is undermined. For example, here are aspects of discipline we don't think about. We usually think about that negative reinforcement, but there's also positive reinforcement. And I had a conversation with a parent not too long ago about this. This idea of positive reinforcement. When they do something good, we should praise them. We should give them snacks. We should take them out to dinner. We should get them a toy. We should basically, they do like training at SeaWorld. When the dolphin does a nice little trick, you give them a treat kind of thing. It's that positive reinforcement that teaches them to keep doing good things. And I had a parent go, yeah, but if you keep doing that, then they're always going to expect something good, and they need to learn how to do good for goodness sake. You're absolutely right. But then there's the flip side of negative reinforcement. If something was done poorly, then we have negativity tied to that. Whether that comes with some kind of punishment, it's like a timeout or grounding or whatever the case may be. But there's a flip side to that too, and that is if that's all we do, then we have bred them, we have conditioned them that if they want mom and dad's attention, then this is what I have to do to raise eyebrows. This is what I have to do to get eyes on me. So what I would contend to us is this. It's not either or. It's both and. We do need to have positive reinforcement. But at the same time, we need to know that choices have consequences. It's not either or, it's both and. Many a times, however, I've noticed for many parents, we usually err on one side or the other. And most parents down in the South focus on the negative reinforcement. Most of them. It's just how it is. It's what I've seen in my experience. And again, it's not necessarily that it's terrible. But I would say, whether what side of the spectrum you may be on, don't ignore the importance or the value of the other one. It's not either or, it's both and. If the goal, again, of our kids is to get attention, then they will do whatever it takes to receive it. If that's their goal, they're going to do what it takes to receive it. If we praise good behavior more than bemoan the bad behavior, we have set a foundation for how our kids will get our attention. This is the importance of positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. You need to have both. Because if all they do to get our attention is to act up, to hit their brother, to make a giant ice cream float in the middle of a kitchen sink or in the middle of the living room floor, if that's all they have to do, then guess what? We have taught them that's what they need to do to get the attention. They're going to do it. And we need to be wise when it comes to the context of discipline. Not so much, again, the idea of making them hurt. No, it has more to do with the idea of making them learn. We want them to grow. We want them to see things. We want them to be mature. We want to move them towards maturity. On the flip side, we don't want to hinder them towards maturity. I've seen that happen with parents before. They hinder their kids in their mature growth, and that could be detrimental sometimes. More on that in a second. Emphasize the importance of cause and effect. Choices have consequences, both good and bad. Emphasize this often. And I'll say this with this one. It's easier to get the ship in the right direction early than to try to change course later. As soon as they can understand the English language, our choices have consequence. When I make a choice, there are results for that choice, good or bad. When I do something good, there's consequences for that. When I make poor choices, there are consequences for that. Let them understand early the importance of cause and effect. Our choices have consequences. This is something I've instituted in my own kids early in. And when we go through what we call the discipline process, this is something that I always make them own up. And that is our choices have consequence. Our choices have effects. When this is laid down as a building block, as an early foundation, discipline becomes a whole lot easier as it goes on. A whole lot easier as it goes on. Here's why, by the way. There's a story that goes along about how back in the days of the circus, they would restrain certain elephants. And what they would do is they would just take a small little rope, tie the elephant, and then take a wooden peg and just put it in the ground, and they would leave him there. And the elephant would never try to go away. And people were very perplexed by this. Like, why that elephant, there's no way a flimsy rope with a little wood peg barely pushing the ground should restrain an elephant like this. And what they discovered is when a baby elephant was born, they would actually take a chain and tie it to like a tree. And the baby elephant would try to get away, and then they were restrained, they were held back. And over time, they just realized, okay, I can't break this anymore, so I'm going to stay where I'm at. So, because again, as they say, elephants never forget. When we set the foundations, when we set the parameters, when we make those parameters hard when they're younger, when we set that worldview younger, as young as possible, then they start to realize, again, our choices have consequence. When we have that set as a foundation when they're younger, discipline becomes a whole lot easier when they get older, because you don't really have to lay the hammer down as hard all that much as opposed to when they're older. And when they're older, they are stronger, they do have a stronger will, they have more availability to freedom. So as we talked about last week, if we're trying to enter the conversation when they're 15 years old, the conversation of the worldview, the conversation of culture, by the time they're 15, on one end, I'm not going to say that you're far gone, that you're a hopeless case, but I will say that you are late to the game, and as a result, it's going to be harder to jump on. It's not impossible, it's just going to be a lot more difficult. The important thing is establish this truth early in, and by doing so, things will get a whole lot easier. So discipline. How do we handle it? What do we do with it? I will say this. Sometimes poor choices come with their own punishment. Sometimes something more is required. However, leave emotion out of it. And here's the thing. Here's the deep, dark secret that we don't like to tell our kids. Mom, Dad, we're human. We're human. We make mistakes. Sometimes we make the poor call. We make a bad call. We have bad days. And imagine this scenario taking place in your life. The alarm didn't go off in the morning. You're running late to work. Had to get everything together. Had to get the kids ready. Had to get the lunches packed. You're rushing. You drop them off at school. And again, you're already running late, so they're tardy. So you had to sign them in, and you had to get out of the car, and you're already running late. You then get to the office. You're late. The boss is upset you're late. They lay into you. And then now you're feeling upset. You're feeling about this big. And then while that's happening, you get a phone call. You forgot that you're supposed to pay a bill. So if you don't pay your bill in like 5 minutes, Verizon or your wireless company is going to shut off your phone. You have to rush to get that taken care of. There's a staff meeting going on. Staff meeting report basically things aren't going really well right now. They may be making layoffs, and how you just made a really terrible impression being late on that day. You go home. There's all kinds of traffic. You've been sitting in what should have been a 15-minute commute, ended up being an hour and a half long commute. You come home, at least thank God that your spouse picked up the kids for you from school, so you don't need to worry about that. You walk through the door, your youngest walks up to you, goes, "Daddy, Daddy," while holding a glass of chocolate milk, trips, falls, and spills the chocolate milk all over the brand new carpet you had installed last weekend. How's that going to go for us, Mom and Dad? Sometimes in the realm of discipline, we let our emotions get the best of it. Do not discipline out of anger. The purpose of discipline is for them to learn, not for you and I to feel better. We had a frustrating day. Kid spills the chocolate milk. I shouldn't lay into my kid for spilling chocolate milk. That's just one example. But let's be realistic here. Okay, maybe some discipline needs to come down. Maybe the discipline is this, again, because we want them to teach, we want to learn, right? We want to teach them. We want to instill knowledge in them. We want to instill maturity in them. Perhaps the way we instill maturity in this moment by our example is deep breath, help them up, and instead of them sitting aside and watching you clean the mess, you teach them how to clean the mess. I teach them. At that point, is there anything more that needs to be done? Is there anything more that needs to be said? Again, sometimes our mistakes when it comes to our kids, sometimes the cause and effect is discipline enough. I shouldn't have to lay into my kid because they spilt some chocolate milk on the carpet. Avoid screaming. It sets a precedent that nothing is bad unless screaming is involved. And it instills a bad habit that the future spouse will not wish to tolerate. Get back to our chocolate milk incident, if you will. They spill it. Again, I've already had a bad day. And again, we're human, but this is the part where, again, as moms and dads, we have to be the mature ones. We sprout off like a volcano. We tear it into yell. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe, oh my gosh, the worst day I had of all the days for you to spill your chocolate milk. Give me that milk. I can't believe. What have we taught our kid? We disciplined them, if you want to really look at it that way. We yelled. They feel bad now. They're crying. But what did we really teach them in that? Yelling and screaming is an acceptable way to deal with our problems. Ask any spouse if they think that's a great idea. Ask your husband or wife if yelling at them is a wonderful idea. No one likes to be yelled at. Again, back to our earlier scenario. What if the boss yells at you? We talked about this last week. If your boss gets in your face and yells at you, you wouldn't like that. We don't put up with that. But sometimes we justify it when we do it to our kids. Avoid the screaming. Avoid blowing up in front of them. We can be angry. We can have anger, but don't let sin take a foothold. The Bible says this: be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun set on your anger. Be angry, yet do not sin. Sometimes bad things happen to us. Sometimes the unexpected happens. Sometimes life is life, and as a result, we get frustrations, we get disappointments, we get letdowns. But often, as we said, we look at discipline as a way for us to feel better, as opposed to, this is my opportunity, this is my chance to instill knowledge and maturity into my child. It's a whole paradigm shift that takes place here. And it's a very important one to realize. Here's another one. Say what you mean what you say. Be very careful with threats, and purpose in your heart that your words will never be idle chatter. Here's what I mean by that. And this, again, is building blocks back to communication, and it also connects well with the discipline. Be careful what you say to your kid. Here's another scenario. Again, we wake up in the morning. It's time to get ready for school. You wake your kid up. Hey, time to get up. You go back and maybe you brush your teeth, or maybe you're putting on your pot of coffee, maybe you're throwing some bread to make some toast or pouring some cereal. A few minutes later, you don't hear any moving back to his bedroom or her bedroom. You go back, they're still in bed. Hey, it's time to get up. You got to get moving. Come on, we got to get to school. You're going to be late. You go back and you take care of, maybe you feed the dog, maybe you're reading the newspaper, and at this point you go back and they're sleeping. And again, we're human. Sometimes our emotions get the best of us. I have seen this happen more times than I can count with parents. They'll say something along the lines of, if you don't get up right now, I'm going to take you to school in your underwear. Say what you mean what you say. This is a challenge to us parents. When we draw a line in the sand, the moment it comes out of our mouth, we have to follow through with it. Because if we don't, what have we taught them? We taught them that mom and dad's words do not matter, that their word is not bond, that their word is not gold, for good or bad. Conversely, if I tell my child that if they make straight A's, we're going to go buy ice cream, we need to have money for the ice cream. Be men and women of our word. Be moms and dads of our word. But this also means, and this is the good part, it forces us now to be mindful of what we say before we say it. We should not let our emotions get the best of us. Because the second I say I'm going to take them to school in their underwear, guess what that means now? The better solution is we don't say that. We don't put that line in the ground. And again, on the positive side of things, if we say that a reward is coming up for accomplishing a certain task, we need to be ready and prepared for when they accomplish that task. It's pretty twisted if we look at our kid and say we're going to do something and they make straight A's, and we didn't prepare for it because we honestly didn't think they were going to make straight A's. That's pretty harsh. Let's not be those parents either. Again, purpose in your heart that your words will never, ever, ever be idle chatter. Kids are different. Discipline according to what gets results. Again, learning over hurting. I have one kid that's more sensitive than the other. I don't know if you guys have that. For those of you who have more kids, I have one kid that's more sensitive than the other. As a result, it doesn't take much to get said child's attention. Usually I can get them with just a look. I just give them that look, and I'm a dad. I don't have the mom look. Moms, you guys got the mom look going for you. All it takes is a look, and me just saying their name. And it gets their attention really fast. The other one, you can say their name 2,000 times. Whatever. Whee! We have kids that work and operate different ways. We have kids, and I know this is going to be harsh in the 21st, not the 21st century. This is going to be harsh in Southern culture, but here's the thing. There are some kids where time out actually works. Where time out is actually effective. And I know in, again, our Southern culture, again, we learn from our moms and our dads, time out, how about a knockout? You know, exactly, right? Because that's how my mom and dad did it. And we already talked about assessing how mom and dad did things, because maybe the way mom and dad did things wasn't maybe the best route. I turned out okay, and maybe you did. But again, if that be the case, let's stand on the shoulders of greatness. But this is something to really consider. Our kids, if we have more than one, chances are they're different, which I always find to be very interesting. How is it that a mom and a dad can produce more than one kid, and those kids are completely different? One may like sports, the other one may like art. One may like purple, the other one may like green. One of them likes basketball, the other likes football. One wants to be a firefighter, the other one wants to be an electrician. One wants to be a scientist, the other one wants to own their business. Different kids, different personalities. As a result, discipline accordingly. Well, it worked for the oldest one, so it's going to work for this one. It might not. They might operate differently. As a result, different methods may need to be considered. Here's another one. Again, back to discipline. Give them opportunities to grow and allow them to fail. Give them opportunities to grow. Allow them to fail. Every other year in our youth ministry, we have what we call a junior-senior retreat. It takes place over spring break. And I bring people along with us who are particular experts in their field. I get people who are small business entrepreneurs, people who've worked in real estate and auto sales. I got people who work in finance and investing and savings. I get people who've had good experience in college in the academic fields. People who've worked with weddings and done wedding planning before and travel planning. And I get all these people together with our juniors and seniors for the purpose of basically a life management retreat, where we talk about paying bills, buying houses, buying cars, time management, roommates, wedding plans, all the things they don't teach you in high school. There have been years in our junior-senior retreat, because another thing we'll do is we require you and expect you to clean up the house. We rent a house out. We expect to clean up the house. And we also will cook dinner. We teach them how to cook meals, more than just Easy Mac. We teach them these things. And many a times I've had teenagers that have never had to learn these things before. And again, that's part of the reason we have the retreat. But moms and dads, I want to challenge you. Again, back to discipline. We always think of discipline as negative. We always think of discipline as something harsh that we have to lay the hammer down on because they messed up. Discipline, I want again, back to that paradigm shift. Discipline is a lot bigger than this. The purpose of discipline is to learn and to grow. We want to learn, we want to teach them, and we want to grow them towards maturity. Here's a way to do it. Here's a way to consider it. Give them opportunities, especially in their teenage years, to learn how to do these things. If you're in the process of buying a car, have them walk alongside you in that process. Teach them how to buy a car. Teach them and give them the heads up before you go in. This is what's going to happen. We're going to talk to the dealer. Here's what's going to go down. Don't say a word kind of thing. Just watch dad go kind of thing. Watch mom go. Here's how you do your research on cars. If you're buying a house, same thing. Here's what you have to do to buy a house. Here's what you need to look out for. Here's what you need to be aware of. I had a college student recently ask me what a deductible was. They just got in a car accident. What's a deductible? No one ever told them. Take these moments. Again, for us, we take them for granted. We know how to pay a bill. We know how to make a major purchase. We know how to do a job interview. But if you have kids that are, I'd say, starting at around age 12 and up, take these moments to pull them and bring them to your side and guide them through these life choices and these life experiences. Here's another one. Again, back to allow them to fail. Give them opportunities to do certain things. Now, again, buying a house, maybe not yet, but think of other smaller things as well. They need to learn, by the time they're teenagers, they need to learn how to talk to strangers. In other words, talk to waiters, talk to waitresses, talk to managers, talk to supervisors, talk to professors, talk to landlords. They need to learn these things. If they're at the restaurant, why are we still ordering their food for them? Well, they might be really awkward. Yeah. When do you want them to learn, now or later? I would rather them learn in a safe environment with you by their side. They can learn something from that. And again, it might be choppy, it might be slow, they might be bashful about it. That's okay. Allow them to fail. Okay, what do we learn from this? Again, what do we learn from this? Build on it and move forward. Allow them to fail. Many a times, again, back to conflict resolution, many a times we want to fight their battles for them in their school. Let them fight a couple of their battles on their own. Again, maybe they have a teacher that's unreasonable, or according to them is unreasonable. Guide them in having to talk to a mature adult and not have to interject yourself in every single one of their battles. And allow them to fail. Allow them to fail and learn as a result. Be reasonable. If you don't know where they got this from, ask your parents. I'm sure they'll be able to tell you immediately. Be reasonable. What do I mean by that? Some instances are beyond their control, and grace should be given when needed. Toddlers are going to lose their minds when they don't have naps. Sometimes the unexpected prevents them from fulfilling curfews. If my 3-year-old hasn't had their nap, it will show by 6 p.m. They're going to be a puddle of goo emotionally. At that point, I understand why they are the way they are. And remember, the goal of discipline is for them to learn and grow, not for me to feel better. I need to be the mature one. Because if I'm losing my cool and I'm losing and letting my emotions run wild, what did I teach my toddler who's also letting their emotions run wild? Something to consider. Be reasonable. On the teenage level, I know we want to instill responsibility, and many times what parents will do as a result, they'll instill a curfew. You need to be home by 9 p.m. You need to be home by 10 p.m. But I want to propose a different idea for you, for those that are hardcore curfew people. Again, sometimes things happen. And I've done youth ministry for a long while, and I'll say this. I've had the displeasure of burying 2 teenagers in my career. And one of them was due to a car accident. And back to the curfew thing, we want them home by X time. We want to instill responsibility. But what if something happens? What if there's a traffic accident or something like that, unrelated to them, and they're now backed up? And again, they couldn't foresee it. They didn't know what was going on. Give grace in these moments. Because we don't want a situation where, oh no, I'm going to miss curfew. And then they hit that gas pedal a little bit harder. They go a little bit faster. They drive a little more reckless, and now they're weaving in and out of traffic. And reckless driving leads to sometimes reckless choices, and those reckless choices can lead to wrecks. And we don't want that to happen. I assure you don't want that to happen. Here's a better method. We want you home by around this time. If you're going to go past this time, give us a call, state your case, let us know what's up, and we can renegotiate if we need to. For example, Mom, Dad, the game went into overtime. I'm probably not going to make curfew now unless I leave right now and miss the game. What do you want me to do? At that point, maybe you tell them come on home. Maybe you say, okay, stay out later, and when the game's over, call me, let me know, drive safe. Maybe you say, okay, 15 more minutes, no problem. You have options on the table at that point. But I encourage you, back to that communication thing. Leave the option for a curfew to be fluid, to not be as hard-nosed, no negotiation, no compromise whatsoever. Leave the door open so they can call and say what's going on, what's happening. And again, if something needs to be moved around, something needs to be moved around. But talk it through. But be gracious. If there was a traffic jam, there was a traffic jam. These are things to consider. Don't be naive either. Their word is not the gospel truth. The youth pastors here in Jacksonville, over the years, we'll get together, we'll have lunches, we'll meet up. And the long story short, there's a youth pastor in town who had a parent. Wow. Their kid had drugs, and as opposed to the mom believing that their child got these drugs like on their own, she firmly believed that the youth pastor provided the drugs. The youth pastor is clearly a drug dealer. I assure you, he was not. But it was better to believe that the youth pastor planted drugs on my kid than the fact that my kid might actually be using drugs. This is what I mean. Don't be naive. Not everything they say is the gospel truth. Maybe the teacher is unreasonable, but maybe our child does not yet fully understand mature adult communication yet. So things were taken out of context. And again, back to discipline, we need to lead and guide them through that process. Other than just unsheathing that sword. There's a term mama bear. We have mama bear terms for a reason, right? If somebody crosses our kid, oh, let's go, here we go. Again, sometimes we leave emotion out of it. Wait a second. Time out. Pull back a second. Why would your teacher say this? Why would your bus driver do that? Why would your classmate go this route? Why did you get this grade? Talk it out and work it out. Maybe it's not necessarily because they're lying. Maybe it's because they misunderstand something. Don't take everything they say as the gospel truth. Be an investigator and get to the bottom of things if you need to before we come out guns blazing. If time and circumstances permit, confer with the other parent. United fronts are a good thing. Now, in the heat of the moment, sometimes, again, if they're about to go play in traffic, you probably don't need, wait, hold on, let me call dad to make sure it's okay to play in traffic. No, you don't need to do that. But at the same time, in major situations, it is good to confer with the other parent, provided that's a possibility. What are we going to do with this? How are we going to address this? What do you think the best method is? Have you talked to this person? Have you talked to our kid about this? I haven't talked to the kid about this. Have you talked to the kid about this? Make sure that you got all the ducks in a row. Because this also happens sometimes, parents. You know how this is. Sometimes our child will tell us one thing and neglect to tell the other. Or sometimes they'll tell us one thing, but they didn't tell the other one. Vice versa. It happens often. And they forget, we forget. And lo and behold, what happens is I'm in the school parking lot expecting to pick up my kid, and I've been sitting there for 20 minutes. They haven't come out yet. But what happened was they called and told mom that they had an extra band practice and they're going to be late after school, or they're going to go over to a friend's house for a study group. And again, I wasn't informed. But I call said child and I may lay into him because I've been sitting out here for 20 minutes. But they told mom. They told mom. On paper, they did the right thing. They told mom. But we're upset at them, and maybe they didn't do anything wrong on this one. Again, we're not perfect. We want them to believe we are sometimes, but we're not perfect. And again, as parents, we need to be the mature ones. We need to lead in the realms of responsibility. So, after all that, I then give you this. When serious discipline arrives, whether that's, again, the form of corporal punishment, whether that's the form of a grounding or a confiscation or taking something away, here's like a checklist of things to consider. Rules to follow, if you will. Here's the first one. Avoid public confrontation. The goal is learning, not embarrassment. If our goal is for our kid to learn and we're laying into them, or we're yelling, or we're screaming, or we're disagreeing in the midst of their friends or their peers or a teacher or a group of other adults, at that point, embarrassment set in, and what we're trying to instill in them is going wah, 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 wah. If we want them to learn, then let's put them in a situation, let's put them in a position where they're going to be better apt to learn and to grow. Avoid public confrontation. Pull them aside, come over here, come into the bedroom, whatever the case may be. Avoid the public confrontation. Here's the other one. Let them fully and clearly knew they fully and clearly knew what was expected of them and the consequences of that failure. Sometimes we want to discipline our kids for things they didn't even know they were supposed to do or not supposed to do. Some parents incorporate what's called a 3 strikes and you're out kind of rule. Like, I'm going to tell you, and then I'll tell you again because sometimes we forget. We all forget sometimes. And then by the 3rd time, okay, now this is where the line's been crossed. I think that's actually a pretty good one, actually. Because again, especially when they're young, they tend to forget things. So give credit where credit's due. So tell them, here's what you need to do. Here's what's expected. And maybe they fail to do it. Remind them, because again, they forget. And with that reminder, usually tell them what a consequence is going to be. If you do this again, X is going to happen. Back to that idea of we need to be men and women of our word. We need to be moms and dads of our word. Think this out before you say it out loud. But let them know, here's what the consequence is going to be for failure to do this. Or if you do this, here's what's going to happen next. Have them make sure they fully and clearly understand what's going to happen at that point. Make them own their decisions. Back to the foundation, the building block foundation of choices have consequence. Make them own their decision. Who made this choice? We're here right now. Who made this choice? Did your mother make this choice for you? Did your father make this choice for you? Did your grandparents, did your friends make this choice for you? Who made the choice? Make them own it. Make them say the words, I did it. Me. It was me. Then remind them again what was going to happen when this was going to take place. Okay. Eliminate any possible excuses. Again, who made the choice? Did someone else make the choice? No, there's no excuses here. Execute punishment justly. No emotion involved. No yelling, no screaming. Okay, here's what's going to happen. And then execute it accordingly. Whether that's a timeout, whether that's taking away the cell phone, whether that's pulling the car keys, whether that is some form of corporal punishment. Whatever it is, execute punishment justly. After that, if they're seeking forgiveness, forgive them. Give them a roadmap for recompense. It's a fancy way of saying, okay, you did wrong. How do I make it right? In our household, one of the big ones is talking back to mom and dad. Another big one is fighting with the siblings. So usually recompense is you need to go back to the person you did wrong and you need to apologize for what you did. Own what you did, own it, and you need to seek forgiveness. And when forgiveness is sought, we forgive them and we move on. Maybe they messed up something, so recompense means maybe they need to clean up something, they need to straighten up something related to the issue at hand. Speak them up. This is a big one. I think this is one that, as parents, again, back to negative versus positive reinforcement, and it's not either or, it's both and. Speak them up in these moments. Again, if I thought the best they could do was going to bring us to that moment, then why did I discipline them to begin with? That was the best they could do. In other words, speak them up. You are better than this. I believe you can make good choices. I believe you are capable of doing better than what we just did. I expect you to do better next time. I believe you can do better next time. Speak them up. Use the words, as we talked about in communication last week. Our words, regardless of what stage of life they're in, our words have the ability to have serious power behind them. So build them up with our words. You can do better. You are better than this. I believe you will do better next time. I hope that we don't come to this situation again. I hope after this we can all learn and we can move on. Whatever the case may be. Which then comes to the last part, and that is move along. After the situation has been settled, the situation's been settled. Don't bring it up again. Don't bring it up in front of them. We've settled the situation. We now move on. It's now a new day. In conclusion, there's just a statement I want you guys to think about as we wrap up with discipline. It's this. How our children treat us when they are no longer obligated to listen to us is a direct reflection of your parenting skills and the impact you had on them as a human. I've done the youth ministry thing for almost 20 years now. And I've seen teenagers come through our youth ministry and have wonderful relationships with mom and dad. Healthy, good, strong, respectful relationships. And I've seen some where as soon as they return 18 at the strike of midnight, peace out. That latter is absolutely tragic. Absolutely tragic. We want them to grow. We want them to learn. Sometimes, moms and dads, we need to put our cards out on the table and explain why we're doing what we're doing. And if we can't find a good explanation of why what we're doing, we may need to reconsider what we're doing. Are we disciplining out of anger, or are we disciplining through the lens of We want them to grow. We want them to learn. These are things to consider as we close out tonight. Get with your spouses. Talk this out. Maybe we need to reevaluate the discipline process in our life. Maybe this paradigm shift is huge. Like, the goal of discipline is to learn, not to necessarily make them hurt. Maybe we need to reconsider opportunities, especially if we have teenage kids, opportunities that we can pour into them and build them up and prepare them for adulthood. These are things to consider. Next week, we will cover spiritual leadership. This is, I think, one of the biggest aspects of parenting, especially in a Christian household, that does not get talked about enough. Actually, I don't think it gets talked about hardly at all. Spiritual leadership in the household. How do you lead a bunch of kids when you're not a pastor? How do you teach them about God and Jesus? So we're going to be talking about that next week. So hope to see you then. Until next time, take care and God bless.